What does the Bible say about the church? The Bible does not mention the term Roman Catholic Church. However, it does talk about Jesus founding his church. In the book of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 18, it says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." This verse is often quoted by the Roman Catholic Church as biblical support that Jesus founded one church, with Peter being the first leader, which they see as the first pope. But that interpretation is not universally accepted among Christians. Some understand the rock as Peter's confessions of faith, not Peter himself. Was the Roman Catholic Church started by Jesus? Historically, the Roman Catholic Church claims an unbroken line of leadership starting from Peter, whom they believe led the church in Rome. They trace the papacy back to him. However, the actual term Roman Catholic and the institution as we know it today developed over centuries, especially after Christianity became the state religion of the Roman Empire under Emperor Constantine in early 4th century AD. So, while Jesus started the church, the Roman Catholic Church as an institution was shaped over time, blending scripture, tradition, and Roman influence. What about the Roman crucifying Jesus? In John chapter 19, verse 16, it says, "Then he handed him over to them to be crucified." Jesus was crucified under Roman authority. But it's important to see that both Roman and Jewish leaders were involved in Jesus' death, and ultimately, Jesus gave his life willingly. In John chapter 10, verse 18, it says, "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord." While Rome was the political tool that carried out the execution, it was part of a larger plan of redemption, not just Roman unbelief. The Bible never says Roman Catholic Church was founded by Jesus, but Jesus founded his church, as in the book of Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. The Roman Catholic Church claims continuity from Peter, but developed as an institution later. The Romans crucified Jesus, but Jesus gave his life willingly for the salvation of mankind. In 30 to 100 AD, the early church or the New Testament times, Jesus Christ dies, rises again, and ascends. The apostles preached the gospel. Peter, Paul, John, and others established Christian communities. The word church in Greek, ecclesia, refers to the gathering of believers, not a building or institution. No denomination exists yet. Yet, followers of Jesus, the New Testament is being written during this period. In 100 to 313 AD, persecution and growth happened. Christians are persecuted by the Roman Empire. Church leaders called bishops begin to oversee regions. For example, is Antioch, Alexandria, and Rome. And the Bishop of Rome gradually gains respect, especially after Peter and Paul are martyred there. No official Roman Catholic Church yet, just a growing persecuted church. In 313 AD, Christianity was legalized. Through Emperor Constantine, issues the Edict of Milan, legalizing Christianity. Christianity starts gaining influence within the Roman Empire. Church councils begin in Nicaea in 325 AD, where the council was formed to settle dispute on doctrine like the Trinity. Church and state start to mix more closely. And in 380 AD, Christianity becomes the state religion under Emperor Theodosius I. Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire. The church becomes more organized, hierarchical, and tied to Rome. Latin becomes the language of worship in the West. The Bishop of Rome becomes more powerful, often seen as the spiritual leader of the West. The simplicity of his call remains unchanged. Follow me. When you see people from other denominations returning to the Catholic Church, it's natural to ask, what is it that draws them back? What do they find there that they feel they're lost or long for? What draws people back to the Catholic Church? I began to reflect more deeply on the truth about Jesus and the Church when I observed something unexpected. People who had once left the Roman Catholic Church were now returning. These were not casual believers, but people who had spent years in other Christian denominations worshiping, serving, and growing in their faith. And yet, something stirred within them that led them back to the very church they once left behind. I asked myself, what reason converted them? Was it the longing for tradition, the beauty of stained glass, solemn rituals, and ancient liturgy? Was it the authority of the church that gave them a sense of grounding in a world filled with doctrinal confusion? Was it the desire for a unified historical connection to the apostles, especially Peter? For many, it seemed to be a combination of all this. The Catholic Church offers a rich history, a structured worship, and a clear teaching authority. In a spiritual landscape filled with division and differing interpretations, some find comfort in the Church's claim of continuity and order. And yet, as I watched and listened, something deeper stirred in me. While I respected their journey, I couldn't ignore what the Scripture plainly revealed. Jesus never called people to a denomination. He called people to himself. The true church is not built with bricks, rituals, or hierarchy, but with hearts transformed by his Spirit. It is not headquartered in Rome or in any earthly city, but wherever two or three are gathered in his name. So, while others were returning to Rome, I found myself returning to Christ, to the simplicity of his word, to the power of his Spirit, to the quiet voice that still says, "Follow me." What did Jesus say to Peter? "And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. In Greek, the words used are Peter or Petros, a small stone or rock. Rock is equals Petra, a large rock or foundation. Some interpret this as Jesus making a word play, saying, "You are Peter, a small stone, but upon this Petra, solid rock, foundation, I will build my church." Interpretation of the rock is that there are three main interpretations of what this rock refers to. First, Peter himself. This is the Roman Catholic view, claiming that Peter was the first pope and that the church was built on his leadership. Secondly, Peter's confession. Many Protestants believe Jesus was referring to the truth Peter just confessed. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God, in verse 16. And the church is built not on Peter, the man, but on the truth of who Jesus is. And the third is that Jesus himself as the rock. Some believe Jesus was saying he is the rock, as is supported by other scriptures, as in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 11. It says, "For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ." They drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ, in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 4. Now, the conflict between Peter and Paul is that in Galatians chapter 2 verse 11 says, "But when Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he was clearly in the wrong." Peter and Paul had a strong disagreement. Paul rebuked Peter because Peter was acting hypocritically, eating with Gentiles when Jews weren't around, but withdrawing from them when they were. This shows Peter, though called in love, was not infallible. He made mistakes, and Paul, faithfully preaching the gospel to the Gentiles, stood firmly for the truth. So, how could Peter be the rock when he stumbled repeatedly, even denying Jesus 3 times and needing correction from Paul? It's possible that Jesus saw in Peter a symbol of what all believers must become: living stones shaped by Christ to build his spiritual house. In 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 5 it says, "You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house." Peter may have had a special role among the apostles, but the foundation of the church is Christ himself, not any single man. I wrestled with the words Jesus spoke to Peter when he said, "Upon this rock I will build my church." For a long time, I wondered, was Peter really the rock? Could the foundation of the church be a man who denied Jesus 3 times? A man who later had to be rebuked by Paul for hypocrisy? What I came to understand was this: Jesus wasn't building his church on a man's strength, but on the revelation of truth, the truth Peter had confessed. "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That is the real rock. Not Peter's personality, not Peter's leadership, but the truth about who Jesus is. Paul preached that same truth boldly to the Gentiles, faithfully and consistently, even when it cost him everything, and he made it clear: no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. So when Jesus spoke of the rock, I believe he was pointing us all back to himself, the only sure foundation for every believer in every age.